Okay, welcome everyone today to our end of February meeting. We have maybe this will be the kiss of death, but we have a pretty light agenda today. But questions will always be welcome, so we've got, yeah. Why do you look so surprised?
I'm not following.
We have a very light agenda.
Light agenda, I didn't hear you.
Oh, okay, Oh, okay, yeah, we have a light agenda today. So I'll start with the territorial acknowledgement. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather, land on which we are broadcasting from today, is the land traditionally cared for by the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Neutral people. We also acknowledge the enduring presence and deep traditional knowledge and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today. At the beginning of the council meeting, we pause to think about the needs of our community. May we show wisdom and compassion in all our decisions. And we don't have an official moment of reflection, but I just wanted to add a short piece that yesterday afternoon, in the morning, I attended a service at Mount Zion Lutheran Church. It was their annual Black History Month celebration. They've been doing it since 2018. And then it was followed by a lunch catered by Ma Bell, the infamous Ma Bell from Kitchener Market. Delicious food. And then there was, a celebration of music, but also a local historian, Peggy Platt, had provided some research she had done around tracing Black history in Kitchener Waterloo. It was really, really informative, really well done, and it was just I know Black History Month hasn't officially ended yet, but it was a really special day. I felt really honored to be there. I know Councillor Wright was with me as well, and as well as other elected officials from across the region. But it was a great day to celebrate community culture and then and to learn some history that had been had previously not been talked about or had been forgotten. So. Thank you to the Canadian Caribbean Association of Waterloo Region, who organized the event, and Peggy Platt, who was the speaker, and Mount Zion Church for welcoming us all to join them. So, moving along to the agenda, disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Seeing none, I need a mover and a seconder for approval of the minutes from January 2nd and January 29th. Moved by Councillor Hamner, seconded by Councillor Wright. All in favor? That is carried. The consent motion today, the consent motion items A through E. Unless council has any questions about any of these items, they'll all be, the approval will take them all as one. Does anyone have anything they want to pull from consent? No? Okay, so a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Bassick, seconded by Councillor Rowe. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, so that brings us to staff reports. Sorry, there was the item advertised. There is a deferred item. The item advertised for consideration declaring parts 2 and 4 of Plan 58R-21605, located on the north side of Millennial Boulevard surplus, is deferred until a later date. So the staff report that will be welcome, Jenny, and Ainsley, the staff report that we'll be discussing today is the speed management on residential streets 2024 update. And there's a recommendation before us, but I guess we're starting with you, Ainsley. Is there a presentation? No? Okay, we'll just open it right up for questions then of council. Councillor Rowe.
Through you, Chair. Hi, Ainsley. Thank you for the report. I'm wondering if you have an implementation date in mind for Columbia Street speed limit reduction.
Through the chair to the councillor, we can implement as soon as the bylaw's been approved and we get locates received for the new posts to go in.
Awesome. And then do you foresee any challenges to the reduction in the, like just starting I can't speak today, but anyways, you know what I'm trying to say.
Through the chair to the councillor, the only challenges might be the compliance, like all other speed reduction that we've implemented through the city. So we can check that through our next council report and do speed studies and report back on driver compliance.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Other questions from council members? Councillor Hanmer.
Thank you. It's okay. It's all right. Through you, Mayor, to our delegation. Thank you so much for the report. It's always good to get the update, and I know a lot of the changes within Ward 1 are coming at a later time because we've done pieces of it. I'm very interested, though, in the schools and the reductions that you've seen. Interested to see that only one of my schools was included, and just a request, I guess, in future updates. I know they've already been 30 for a while, but we're still having some speed issues there. And my question is really more around the KW bilingual school. There's been a significant reduction, which is great. However, it's still being a problem. So just are there other considerations we might have for that particular area? It will be one that probably won't go down to 30 just because of the streets that are there, but just any thoughts or suggestions around guidance for that school?
Through the chair to Councillor Hanmer, as we note in this report and the one that kind of follows up to it is that posted speed limits are just one tool and they're just one thing that we do as the overall road safety program. What we're going to be doing in part of that next step is not only reporting on the compliance, but then we're going to look at as a holistic, and school zones will be one of those, what are the next layered things that we put into those? So we're going to take all this information as we go forward and then look to countermeasures to help even further reduce the speeds.
Terrific, and I realize I asked this question off the top, and hopefully I didn't surprise you too much with my question. I think it's important for public to know that this is only one tool, as you've said, in making our streets safer throughout the city. So I'm encouraged to hear that there'll be more layers and more education that will go along with it. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wright.
Thanks, through you, Chair. Obviously, Ward 7 is extremely happy with the implementation of this pilot. I just heard so much positive feedback from residents and work with neighborhood associations and especially with school communities. So I just want to pass that along with staff's consideration of expanding that 30 kilometers in south of Union. So that's very much appreciated. I'm just wondering if you could comment briefly on the outliers in the data set. And I'm looking specifically at the North Lake School and really curious what's going on there.
Through the chair to the councillor, we have reviewed the data and we didn't really have an explanation for why that one was an outlier. We'll continue to monitor it and we can follow up on it in the future, but yeah, that's...
Okay, I think that would probably be of interest to the Student Transportation Services Waterloo region if you get to that point and have some clues about it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bassett.
Thanks, through you, Mayor. Yeah, and the other question I have about North Lake is if you were to take North Lake out of the average speed reduction, do you have a revised average reduction number for us?
Through the chair to the Councillor Vasic, we do. It's about 7.3 kilometers an hour reduction if you take out the outlier.
Okay, so great, that's good to know. Yeah, I guess I just want to highlight also the 85th percentile in St. Agnes and Blue Vale Collegiate. Like I haven't heard from anybody in the ward really about the speeds, except that when they first were implemented and people were frustrated with the change, but at the same time, St. Agnes and Blue Vale is an area that I get a lot of concerns about because there's also a curve there, there's two schools, there's drop-offs right around the curve. Anyways, so I think that it's really noteworthy to point out that the 85th percentile is at 58 before the reduction, and now it's at 47. So I mean, it's still fast. 47 is still, it's not 30, but that's, it's almost 10 kilometers, which is significant if somebody were to be hit. So hopefully we see that go down more. I'll be curious. Yeah, so anyways, I just want to highlight that and know that the percentage that's been sort of floated around and that is in here too is not a fully accurate representation if you take North Lake out, which is obviously hopefully a bit of an anomaly. But like Councillor Wright, I'll be interested to see more about where that goes. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bodley? I was just hoping to move it with some comments. Okay, yep, go ahead. Councillor Wright.
Getting better at this procedure stuff here. So yeah, so I mean, being one of the two wards that were represented here in the speed management implementation, I just wanted to speak to it, and I wanted to highlight that. I mean, when we got the report, this is exactly what we were talking about was likely to happen based on all of the data points that we were looking at before we implemented this decision. So that's whether we looked at our pilots that we did previously, it's very much in line with that, or some of the global data that's out there on other jurisdictions that have reduced speed limits. Even with no other interventions in those places, we've seen a positive impact on reducing speeds. And I think this is really a huge thing for us because we've now been able to get the average speed across all the study areas below 40 kilometers an hour, whereas prior to these changes, the average speeds were above that. And the impact on reducing some of our worst speeding offenders, as Councillor Bassick referenced in that 85th percentile speed, is even bigger, as those drivers are now driving pretty close to what the old average used to be, which is great. And moving drivers from 50 to 40 increases the chance of survival for a pedestrian or cyclist significantly, and getting drivers from 40 to 30 even more so. So I'm really happy to see the positive direction that we're headed in. And I guess I would argue that there's no other traffic calming intervention that we can implement at the city that gives us this level of bang for our buck in terms of broad behavior change across the board in the city than lowering the limits like we have. But that said, I know we have more to do to continue to work towards our Vision Zero goals, which is why I'm so pleased to see the updates to our traffic calming policy that are coming forward next. But I just wanted to take a second to highlight one of the other tools in our toolbox, particularly for my council colleagues, aside from Councillor Hanmer, who knows about this, and that's the region's implementation of speed cameras in school zones. And so one of the school zones that's not listed in our study area here is St. Nicholas, which is on Laurelwood Drive. Laurelwood Drive is a major collector road in Ward 2, but it's one that has 3 schools on it. And when I was first elected to council, this was probably the area of greatest concern with respect to speeds in my ward. And we would conduct studies on the road which showed the 85th percentile speed over 60 kilometers an hour in an area with an elementary school and the neighborhood's largest park in it. And by doing nothing more than changing the limit and adding a camera, we've been able to reduce that 85th percentile speed from over 60 to 38 kilometers an hour. And average speeds are now lower at St. Nicholas than any of the other school zones that were listed in our pilot. And the other thing that I found really interesting is that we've been able to reduce the amount of traffic on the road significantly, almost a third less cars on Laurelwood Drive in front of St. Nicholas than when we did studies pre-COVID, which is huge. That means that there's less cars on a really heavy pedestrian street, and we've got drivers changing their behavior and taking regional roads, which is where the faster speed cars should be going anyways. And I would just say, for me, as someone who frequently walks in this area, the difference on the street is like, it's night and day. When you walk there today, it's not only a safer scenario to cross the street, you don't feel like you're getting gunned down when you go to cross the street and got to run across, but also it's so quiet. The street is so much quieter than it used to be before, and I think it's just a much more enjoyable place to walk, which is not something easily to replicate on a major collector road like Laurelwood. So I wanted to highlight how impactful that's been for my council colleagues who don't have speed cameras yet in their ward, and that's obviously just another tool in the toolbox as we move forward from lowering the limits, putting in speed cameras, other traffic calming implementations. So yeah, I'm really happy to see the progress that we've got from this report. Thank you to staff for the implementation so far, and I'm eager to continue to push forward on our Vision Zero goals.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Are there any further comments that anyone wants to make? I would just add a couple to Councillor Bodley's comments. One to mention former Councillor Tennille Boniger, who I know this was very important for her as well. So if she's listening from Australia, thank you for the work you did in the previous term of council to help bring this to where we are today. And just also to note, just around the comments about regional roads, speeding on regional roads is certainly something that the regional council and regional staff are taking a very close look at as well, because we know that speeding remains one of the #1 concerns and complaints and issues that residents contact us about. So, and that includes regional roads as well as the city roads. So, kudos, I think, to staff and to council for us actually responding and doing something about one of these really significant issues that people face. But just wanted to note that we're also working on the regional roads as well to bring some of those speeds down, because we know it's like highway driving it's highway speeds, I should say, at times. So with that, if there's no other comments or questions, we have a mover and a seconder. So all in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. As other councillors said, thank you very much for getting this program up and running and continuing the implementation. So the next item here is the Traffic Calming Policy and Collision Countermeasure Program. And we have a presentation by Jenny. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. In 2021, Council approved the Transportation Master Plan update, in which recommendation number 37 advises to adopt a formal, data-driven, evidence-based decision-making process as part of the Road Safety Action Plan. This report proposes 2 enhanced processes, and the following slides hopefully help illustrate the differences between them and advantages to the enhancements. Currently, we do have a traffic calming policy and process and a reported collision review program that have served the city well, providing good information for improvements to road safety. We are now recommending enhancing these programs using advanced technology and methodologies to better understand driver behavior and improve road safety. Right now, for speed-related concerns, we review roads where we receive requests for speed reductions and study those on an individual criteria-based process. This is done by placing data counters, like the road tubes that you see, on a road on a singular location for about 1 to 3 days. This method is still valid and it is statistically supported, but only captures that single location for that short amount of time. The enhanced process that we're recommending would utilize big data or large crowdsourced data to see operating speeds on a citywide network. We would be able to see approximately 3 months of data on most, if not all, city streets. This would allow staff to identify areas and address them based on priority, using our resources responsibly. Where the need arises, or where a gap is seen, or if the big data is not available, we are still aiming to use our single source counters. The second process, and the next process that we're recommending to enhance, is the Collision Countermeasures Program. Currently, collisions are reviewed annually based on reports from Waterloo Regional Police. These reports are screened and analyzed for patterns such as time of day, type of impact, or driver behaviors or driver actions. If a pattern is seen at a particular intersection or mid-block, staff make recommendations to correct or improve that. An example of a corrective countermeasure could be adjusting the radius of corners. This has been shown to reduce collisions by 5 to 12%. It also depends on the severity as well. Or another measure that we've used before is increasing street lighting, which has reduced collisions by 42 to 79%, depending on the severity. Other measures that we could use for any patterns are such things such as road diets, roundabouts, bike boxes, pedestrian refuge islands, just to name a few. So in addition to this review on reported collisions, staff would like to collect and analyze data from connected vehicles or another large source data source. These types of data sources show driver behaviors in larger patterns such as harsh braking. These behaviors can provide insight as to where collisions may be at a higher risk, allowing staff to proactively mitigate issues. So for example, connected vehicle data, what you see in the screen is showing high volume of harsh braking at intersections. And this particular driver behavior tends to show us that it runs a higher risk of rear-end collisions. So therefore, a preventative measure we could be looking at is looking at installing dedicated turn lanes. And dedicated turn lanes have been proven to reduce or prevent collisions by 25 to 40%. Both of these methods identify locations where collisions are or may be at a higher risk. There are some key advantages to enhancing both of these processes. The first one is that it's now that the enhancements are an equitable process that look at the city holistically and address the highest needs regardless of the location. It enables city staff to proactively prioritize and address speed and collision-related concerns on Waterloo roads. They will address or advance the city's Vision Zero goals. They also will decrease or have the opportunity to decrease the time taken to implement road safety measures. So whereas a singular study right now could run us 1 to 3 years from inception to installation, we now could be able to shorten that to 6 months, and you'll see in the next slide sort of how that would work. It's important to note that we are continuing the engagement with the residents and council on this, and so that way we can be very transparent and very accountable for our actions. And this overall will build a very robust program for our road safety and move it forward. To make these programs sustainable and effective, staff would formalize them into an annual process. So during the first quarter, this is where staff would compile all of the speed data, collision data, using either the large source or the reported collisions from all sources. We would do a large gathering from the previous years. And then rolling that into the second quarter, we'd start to identify locations based on the data received and when we received them. We work in conjunction of identifying which countermeasures, which mitigation measures would be most appropriate based on the priority as we go through. As well as at that time, we're also then collecting that data or looking at the data on all of the countermeasures that have already been implemented. So we're looking at the effectiveness of those that have been done to further inform or recommend like anything more that needs to happen in that location or somewhere new. Into the third quarter is where we're looking at doing some implementation. Once we have all the data, once we look at what's been working, what we need to fix, then we're going to be looking into capital construction or looking through our approved budgets to find out where we can and what the most appropriate traffic calming measures or initiatives should be. And then on an annual basis, we will report to council summarizing all of our countermeasure and traffic calming plans, including the effectiveness of what's happened and measures that are to come in the following year. So in conclusion, these recommended practices would move the city forward using a data-driven, evidence-based decision-making system while providing the city with state-of-the-art tools to prevent future fatalities and injuries on our roadways. And with that, I open up the floor, and Bob and I are happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Jenny. That's a really helpful presentation. So council, questions, comments, Councillor Hammer.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Jenny, thank you very much for the presentation and the overview. I always like things that have us looking proactively and preventing wherever we can. And I think the measures that you're putting in place and outlining sound great for big areas where we need to do some changes. You know, each year we have requests for traffic calming in residential areas, which probably wouldn't all fit into some of these bigger plans. So can you talk to us a little bit about how those kinds of things are still going to be handled in this new plan?
Sure. Through the mayor to Councillor Hanmer. Those will be, because we're collecting data not on a network-wide basis, requests that come in from the residents, what we're anticipating is that we'll already have that data on hand, and we'll already have the list of priorities of where we need to put our resources first. And so what may happen and what we're anticipating happen is that we'll be able to reply back to those residents and say, thank you for your request. Here's the information we have. Here's the priorities in our city. Here's all the actions that we're doing. And, you know, while we absolutely take road safety as our priority, there are other areas that need to come before this area. So we'll be able to not only give them a quicker answer with the information right away, we'll be able to, hopefully they may not agree with it or at least accept it, but they might understand a little bit more about how we go about making those decisions.
Great, that's helpful. Will it also be coupled with the opportunity to let the residents know things they may be able to do in their areas as we currently are doing now?
Yes, through the mayor to the councillor. Yes, absolutely. The current process and the communications and engagement that we have with residents, that will still continue. So the work we do with Student Transportation Services of Waterloo, the work that we do in our neighborhood associations, that will all continue.
Okay. Great, because I think that is a piece, and it doesn't quite fit into the way that you've described the plan, but it's a key element of the plan too, that we continue it going. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hanmer. Councillor Bassick.
Thanks through you, Mayor. Very exciting, wonderful. The presentation highlighted some of the advantages, so I'm just wondering, are there any disadvantages or any challenges you might anticipate, and then how those might be mediated?
Through the chair to Councillor Bassick, some of the challenges that I think that we may face is alluding to Councillor Hanmer's question about public input and requests for. Because we used to be very reactive, and if I received a request for a specific street, we went and did that study, and we focused on that. Whereas with this, we may have the information that we've already looked at it, and they may not see that. But what I'm hoping is that we'll be able to give them more detailed information and quicker information. And so that's the one thing that I can see as a disadvantage, perhaps. And I think that'll be our job to help to communicate it very clearly.
Thanks. And like with the technology, has this technology this has obviously been widely used, and so you don't foresee any challenges with that? Like it's just going to probably operate pretty seamlessly and give us the data we're looking for?
Through the chair to Councillor Bassick, that is something we've already engaged, not only third-party vendors, but other municipalities, consulting companies. We've started the conversation. This data has been out for a long time. And it's just now starting to get into municipalities. I know the region of York has used this. So there's some others that have gone, they're ahead of us, but not many. We will be pretty much one of the first of like the lower tier to get in there. But the data has been statistically valid. It's good to use, and we don't foresee, it will be, the only thing I can think of is maybe a timing issue. You know, as our first quarter, third quarter, second, third, fourth, shifting depending on when we can get those things all lined up.
So managing council's excitement.
Thank you, Councillor Bassick. Councillor Rowe.
Through you, Chair. Thank you so much, Jenny. It is a really exciting policy update. So I have two questions. The first is, how would something fit into this program? For example, if you really needed a no parking zone on a sign on a street, would that have to follow the same process, or are there opportunities for immediate action if necessary?
Through the mayor to Councillor Rowe, those processes, if something was urgent and needed immediately, such as no parking, we would review that and install as we do today.
Wonderful, thank you. My second question is about, it does connect to Councillor Hanmer's question about areas where perhaps there isn't data collection or the data doesn't maybe reflect what's happening. For example, Mohawk in Ward 6, where there is a very sharp turn and the speed at the moment doesn't indicate an issue, however, the bend and the children in the neighborhood do. So I'm just wondering how that connects and how it would fit into the process in terms of priority.
Through the mayor to Councillor Rowe, that's where we come into really leaning onto the connected vehicle data, or the crowdsourcing data from here, the here data on speeds and around there. So what we can do is, instead of using our own counters for a particular section, before, in the middle, and after, we can actually have a look at that street as a whole, saying, is there harsh braking around there? What are the speeds? We can pinpoint all the breadcrumbs. So the speed data that we'll get is all particular breadcrumbs, and what we can do is pull that data into micro, and we can look at exactly what's been happening through that curve. And those are those locations where we may not have any recorded collisions. We may not have any, and it's just people calling in saying, I'm worried, or I've seen this, but I have no documents that point to an actual problem per se. But that's where we lean into this big data to say, you know what though, there is a higher risk of it because of these driver behaviors and actions. And so depending on what comes out of the city, the network analyses, that location in particular could come up on a high end saying, if we saw the dots, the blue dots on the right-hand side, there could be a massive cluster at that particular location, and that's where it would trigger us to see that there's something, happening here, and we'd be able to look at that. I know that Bob has his hand up too.
Go ahead, Bob.
Thank you, through you, Mayor, to Councillor Rowe. With that said, we can certainly have the conversation if there's particular nuances to the concern that you have that we can certainly investigate and leverage upon this as well.
Okay, thanks for that additional clarification.
Yes, thank you both. That does answer my question.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bodley.
Thank you, through you, Mayor McCabe. I have a question about there's obviously going to be a point in time that we're going to be trying to sort of having to build our database, and that data might, I don't want to say conflict, but I guess I will, for lack of a better word, conflict with the data that we're currently collecting. So I'm turning my eye back to the report that we just received. Are we planning to continue to receive those reports in the old manner as well as the new one, so that we can so it's the same type of data that we're receiving? Or are you planning on fully switching to this for reports to council, with the caveat that obviously the data might be not the same as how we've previously collected it?
Through the chair to Councillor Bodley. I think that's something that we're going to have to work through in details, but I think that in order to be consistent, I'd like to collect, if we're doing control sites, those are the ones that I'm going to want to say, I want to measure this particular location in the same spot every year so that we can go year over year comparison. But then what I'd also like to do is overlay that to say, well, what is it doing on the entire street for the 3 months, not necessarily just the 3 days in that one spot. So we may look at both, but you'll have a year over year comparison to be consistent.
Thank you. And then my second question, through you, Mayor McCabe, is around the connected vehicle data and sort of the verbiage about collisions and near collisions, and how I guess that harsh braking and accelerating data that we get, is that really looking at near collisions with other vehicles, or is there something that's more predictive data-wise about collisions, near collisions with pedestrians and cyclists? How does that data work?
Through the chair to the councillor, to be honest, I don't have all the details yet of exactly what that looks like. I'm not sure. Do you have more on that, Bob?
Yeah. Thank you, through you, Mayor, to Councillor Bodley. The data isn't that precise that it knows whether it's a conflict between a pedestrian or a cyclist or a vehicle. It's simply taking vehicle data that drops a breadcrumb at a point in time every 3 seconds on whether the vehicle's braking hard or accelerating hard. And those factors are actually known to contribute, like to be correlated with collision data. So the more data that we have, the better information we have on hand to make decisions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Councillor Bodley. Councillor Wright.
Hi, thank you through you, Mayor. I find all this stuff really fascinating, especially all the elements that will contribute to some sort of mediation on risky behavior. I'm curious about the connected data. Is that telemetrics from like opt-in programs with insurance industries, or what is connected vehicle in that context?
So through the mayor to Councillor Wright, it is typically it's already built into your vehicle. So it's the data that is pre-programmed into most vehicles these days. I want to say anything past I think it was 2012 or 2013. A lot of the vehicles past then have information built into it, and then they have license agreements with third-party companies like AirSage is the one we're talking to, and they license it out to them, and then they provide it to others.
Okay, so that's definitely the telemetrics that I was thinking about, and then just building on what Councillor Bodley was asking about, like, what is the potential for disaggregating the information if we're looking at, for instance, collisions involving neuron, which we definitely experienced last year, or vehicle and pedestrian collisions, or vehicle and bicycle collisions, or any other forms of active transportation? Are we able to look at any of that in any detail, or would that be like mostly through the Waterloo Region Police Services?
Through the mayor to the councillor, it'd be a combination of both. So we'd still be using the reported data. Neuron specifically, we work with that vendor. They have a lot of data that we would pull from that. Excuse me, the connected vehicle data would be, they'd show hotspots. So if there was a lot of harsh braking or a lot of activity, a particular action at that intersection or what have you, then it would allow staff to go, okay, we need to look at this. And then we would go out and do a specific in-service road safety review to say what exactly is happening. Is it related to pedestrian activity? Is it related to type of active transportation, or is it related to something else? And then that's where we would put in recommendations to, either mitigate, prevent, or correct.
Okay, and thank you. Just my last question has to do with, most of this has to do with infrastructure and how we're going to manage city-owned infrastructure. But then where's the feedback loop in terms of the risk and behavior element of it? Like, do the vendors that we're working with then have like two-way sort of data or responsibility in terms of that then affecting insurance or anything like that, in terms of actually getting at the behavioral element of it?
Is that a question for Mr. Henderson? Is that what you're saying, Jenny? Okay,
Yeah.
over to you, Bob.
Through you, Mayor McCabe, to Councillor Wright, I'll try to answer that question. Long story short, the data through the connected vehicle data is not specific to certain types of modes of transportation. It's simply dropping, like if you can picture data departing from any type of vehicle, dropping a breadcrumb every 3 seconds, giving you information on speed, the acceleration rate, the decel rate, anything like that, but it's not giving us, it won't give us specific data related to, I will say, behavior, but we'll be able to take that information and see and drill down into it to see where there's behaviors that are concerning, and we'll take action to address those behaviors. That can be in the form of infrastructure improvements or educational programs. So if we see particular streets with behaviors that we don't like to see, we could probably undertake an education campaign to some degree to affect that behavior.
Thanks. I just was considering the fact that Waterloo is the, one of the insurance capitals, and this could be a really sort of friendly neighborhood program that we could be sharing with our insurance partners. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Any other questions from council? I just had a couple of questions myself. Some of them are already answered, so thank you, council. So we still have to tender this, right? Like, we don't have a vendor in mind, is that correct? Because partly what I'm wondering is there a potential local vendor that could provide this kind of big data? And then my follow-up question to that is there an opportunity to work with any of our post-secondary institutions to help with some of the research or some of the follow-up?
Yes, through you. And yes, absolutely. In the report, we did mention that we are working with a consultant, SEMA Plus, AirSage, TNS, which is our traffic engineering software, as well as Region of York and Mississauga and another province, with trying to get a federal grant. So we're hoping that we're successful in that federal grant in order to obtain the connected vehicle data, and then the consultant will work with us on working on getting that massive data into something that's easily workable for us and into our existing software that we already have, so it's nicely integrated. So that's one part. The other part is we're talking to a well-known crowdsourced speed data company called HERE. They are the leaders right now in speed data that other municipalities and a lot of other companies are using. So we're in the talks, but I will also be making sure that I connect in with our procurement group to make sure that I'm following all the procedures. And we do, to address the universities, we always engage, or we will engage, or have been engaging with the University of Waterloo. We're already working with them and the City of Kitchener on the Vision Zero work. And that work ties into collision countermeasures and their effectiveness, and sort of where you get the biggest bang for your buck and the most impact. So it's all kind of linked together.
Sorry, that sounds wonderful, thanks. Just wanted to clarify, you said speed data, not speed dating, right? Sorry, had to work that in somehow. Data, okay. Just another, is this data, once we do have it, is this information that would be helpful in some format to share with our regional partners, maybe for some of the work that they're doing? And I don't know, you're the expert, not me, but maybe in understanding traffic patterns and knowing where bus stops could be, or something, or bike lanes, or I don't know, something that the region manages. Will this data will we be able to share it with partners like the region?
Yes, through you, Mayor. Right now, we do share data in terms of counts, like intersection counts or other types of data with the region. It's always a good idea, especially because of the two-tier, and residents don't necessarily know or care to know the difference between the two. So, and in order to get the best recommendation or the best result, we do need to share. So this data, depending on the outcomes of it and what we do with it, absolutely we will be sharing it, or at least working with our region counterparts.
Okay, that's great to know. And I'm also it's more of a comment than a question really, but I'm just a flag, and maybe it's for Carrie and our communications department, but because we know we have some people who are concerned about when we start to use words like connected vehicles and big data and things like that. So just that our messaging around this is as clear as possible. I know we always try, we aim for that, but that we're not collecting any private information. Like we're not collecting license plates, and we're not tracking people and things like that. Just wondered if you could speak to that to reassure people.
Yes, through you, Mayor, you make an excellent point, and it is one thing that's on our list, is working with our folks in clerks and legislative services to make sure that we are following all privacy laws. All of the data that we will be getting, they follow very strict rules, and there will be agreements in place, and we'll make sure that we are following that, and then working with communications to get that message out.
Thank you very much. Oh, see, that's prompted a question from Councillor Rowe.
No, I may have already missed this, so I'm sorry if you've mentioned it, but I was just thinking of timeline. Do you have a timeline when you would like this up and fully functioning?
Through the mayor to Councillor Rowe, we are, because we now, the application to the federal grant has been submitted, we're waiting for that response. In the meantime, we're in discussions with the here to get the HERE data, as well as, so that's for this enhancement part. We already have and are working on all of the data collection that we do normally, like the stuff, our counters we put out, and the reported collisions that come from the police. We are going to be looking at starting our screening probably in April, May, and then we'll work forward and through that. So I'm hoping to have some preliminary results and identifications by the summer.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. And just the last question I had was, how does this work, or will it work, like at where our roads run into Kitchener or into another municipality? I think mostly Kitchener. Like, will the data, like, I'm just wondering, will the data look kind of strange because it's suddenly there's no data, like at those border areas, or how does it account for the fact that a vehicle's moving into another municipality that doesn't have this in place?
Through you, Mayor, the data that comes in, like, we'll ask for the jurisdictional boundary, but on the roads that are shared between, like I'm thinking in particular in Ward 7, we will probably look to the vendor to say, give us some information on either sides. If anything happens, we're going to be working with City of Kitchener, sharing that data as well, and then go from there. But it won't, they'll, like, as you can see in the borders, they cut off the lines, but in essence, we will have the data on the outside of those lines as well.
Okay, thanks.
We just won't show it to the public. It'll be Kitchener's part, sorry.
Okay, sorry, go ahead, Bob.
Thank you, through you, Mayor, to you. This will be a program that evolves over time too as well, so we'll certainly be able to figure out where some hurdles are and how we can adjust and pivot and correct, so it's going to be an evolving program for sure.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, this sounds like a really great initiative. Thanks for bringing it to us. And great that we're going after the federal grant. Hopefully we'll be successful, and always like to hear that we're one of the first pursuing this, because I think it's, as we said with the previous presentation, traffic and managing it and managing driver speeds and making sure people are safe regardless how they use the road, whether they're a pedestrian, a cyclist, someone with a mobility device or a vehicle. It's really important that people feel safe and that they are safe. So thank you for this. So I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Bassick, seconded by Councillor Rowe. All in favor. That is unanimous. Thank you very much, Jenny and Ainsley and Bob. Okay, so the next agenda item is a public meeting, but the formal public meeting was deferred. And so the formal public meeting for zoning bylaw amendment Z23-14, Shabad Lubachevich of the Waterloo region, 251 Albert Street, Ward 6, Central Columbia, which was scheduled to occur on Monday, February 26th, has been deferred to a later date. If anyone is looking for more information regarding this application, please contact the planner, and we can provide that information to you. So the next one is consideration of notice of motion given at previous meeting. There are none. A notice of motion, there is none. Councillor Rowe.
Thank you. Yes, I would like to give notice of motion for Monday, March 4th, relating to the Ontario Heritage Act.
Okay, great, thank you. Is that okay, clerk?
Yes, council will see that it will appear in the revised packet that's coming out at the later part of this week. So I think at the appropriate time on March 4th, Councillor Rowe will ask council to waive the time for the notice.
Great, thank you very much, Councillor. I actually also had, I was going to raise it under new business, but I'll raise it now. I also had a notice of motion regarding the Ontario Energy Board's recent decision around ending the subsidies for gas companies, which the province overruled just last week. So I have a motion that I'll be bringing forward on the 4th of March as well, and hoping that we can waive notice. I should have it ready for you later today. Okay, so communications and correspondence, there is none. Unfinished business, there is none. Questions, council? Any questions? Seeing none. New business? Go ahead, Jen. We know you have, Councillor Vasic, we know you have some events you probably want to report on.
Well, I was going to wait this time because mine is mostly Waterloo, and I don't know if Julie, you went, or I didn't want to take it away.
No, I was not able to attend. I was elsewhere.
Super. Well, it was Waterloo. It was Waterloo Light because it got rescheduled because of weather. And so they just had it in the square instead of multiple different places, though Clay and Glass Gallery still did their thing. It was just like really animated, the public square. And it was so wonderful to see all the people. I popped by for like an hour on my own, and then I brought our littlest with me, who had a great time at the Clay and Glass Gallery and got a hot chocolate. She's going to be very fun to hang out with growing up. But there was like maple syrup in ice, maple syrup taffy. There's hot chocolate for sale. Tons of people were skating. Of course, there was DJ King Kadeem DJing, you know, my fave. Anyways, it was a really nice afternoon, and I wanted to highlight it especially because Lumen, which is also put on by the same staff team, very small staff team, exceptional staff team, has been nominated for a Business Excellence Award in the category of Service Excellence in Hospitality and Tourism by the KW Chamber. So like a big thanks to that team who puts on huge community events with small resources, growing resources, thank you, Elle. And people just have a great time, and I think they are starting to kind of not take them for granted in a bad way, but in a really good way that they can expect these kind of really wonderful community celebrations in the Uptown.
Fantastic, thank you. I was going to mention Lumen's nomination for the business. No, that's okay, that's okay. No, it's great. We're looking forward to the awards night coming up in March. Anything else? Go ahead, Councillor Wright.
I'll just quickly mention the coldest night of the year walk was Saturday, and it was great to see council colleagues there. Although I missed you, Mayor, I got there late. But it sounds like they had a very successful walk, and that's of course in support of SHOW, so supportive housing of Waterloo, and very much needed in this community. And then also on Sunday, the mayor and I were, as you mentioned earlier, we were at Mount Zion Lutheran Church to celebrate Black History Month and to connect with members of the Black community across the region, with some of our other council colleagues from across the region, as well as federal MP Mike Morris and Catherine Fife, member of provincial parliament. The mayor and I had the privilege of serving food to the lunch crowd, and so that was really fun. It was an excellent event and very well attended. Thanks.
And just on the show event, it was they set a record on 2 counts. They had over 240 walkers, and their goal was to raise $65,000, and they exceeded that. They were somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 to 85,000. So a tremendous support from the community for that really important organization. Anything else, council, that you want to share under new business? Seeing none, okay. Enactment of the bylaws. Who would like to, moved by Councillor Hanmer, seconded by Councillor Bodley. All in favor? That is carried. And sadly, we are already at the adjournment, moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Vasic. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of the afternoon.